prepared a report, and it's entitled Addressing the Challenge of an Aging Population in Bermuda. I don't think people really, they probably don't understand it the way they should, the seriousness of this here, Mr. Speaker, because when we talk about the age dependency ratio, there was a study done for the years 2017 to 2026 on the ratio of age dependency. And let me try to explain that a little better, Mr. Speaker. What that means is that in Bermuda, in 2017, we had 28 seniors over 65 to every 100 people that you could depend on, meaning that they were still in the workforce, meaning they're from ages 24 to 64, Mr. Speaker. Within that 9-year period in Bermuda, that average increased from 28 to 43.6, double digits, Mr. Speaker, which means that in that short period of time, there is 44 seniors for every 100 working people, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, when you compare the 10 countries, Canada, Germany, Japan, China, India, the USA, UK, France, and Italy, their dependency was half of what we have done in that period of time. And it takes me to my next point, Mr. Speaker, that because studies have been done, and we've heard the Minister Hayward state that we need about 8,000 workers in this country. But I think people take that wrong. They think that the minister wants to just bring 8,000 people in here and displace Bermudians. How wrong can they be, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the government headed by the Minister of Economy has been trying to get investors in Bermuda. And that's how you increase your jobs in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, when we take the Southampton Princess will have at sometimes 1,000 people up there working in order to get it ready for opening. And then I think they'll have just over 700 when they're finally open in stage 1, people that are not employed now. And they're hoping, and we're hoping, that we can get at least 70% Bermudians. And let me say this, I endorse the remarks that Colonel Birch made, I think it was Friday night, on the Southampton Princess. He was correct, he was right. He said it on the radio, I think it was Thursday, and he was spot on, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, I feel not comfortable that we're going to be able to staff that hotel with the number of Bermudians that Southampton Princess would like to do, or we would like to do, Mr. Speaker, because, and the reason why I say that, Mr. Speaker, one time in Bermuda, if a bartender lost his job at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock you had another Bermudian. Well, today, it's not like that. Today, we've got foreigners as bartenders. And I do know, Mr. Speaker, in the unionized shops in Bermuda, hotels that is, that the basic rate for a bartender was probably one of the best. And then on top of that, you got the 15%. So if you work, you made a pretty good wage, Mr. Speaker. So now we can't even find sufficient Bermudians to work as a bartender. And I want to thank Bacardi for the program that they are going to have introduced in Bermuda to send 10 overseas to get them to be professional bartenders. And so this shows that this government and the private sector coming together to address the situation because they're paying for it, Mr. Speaker. I applaud them. First class, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hear people say, and I sort of get annoyed at it. They say, oh, I go to a restaurant and foreigners serve me. Well, who do you want to serve you? Particularly, and I speak about the hotels because I know the rates are certainly different. The gratuities are certainly different than you get in some of the restaurants. And if you go to places like England, even United States, you find a lot of foreigners working in that industry. Somehow natives, not all of them, because I enjoyed the hotel industry, but it's not meant for everybody, Mr. Speaker. And I know a lot of people don't like to do the shift work. And one thing you'll find about the trade unions in Bermuda, we don't discriminate against workers, regardless of where they're from, Mr. Speaker, because we are affiliated to many of the international unions worldwide. And I've never heard of trade unions in Bermuda speak against foreigners. We represent them regardless of where they're from, what they look like. They get the same good representation from our unions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this 8,000 people that we need, if we don't get those levels up, the less people you have in this country, the more expensive it becomes. Your insurance will go up because there'll be less people working to pay for the insurance, unless you can tell retirees that got to pay for insurance. And as you know, the government is embarking on a national insurance plan. And I think one of the greatest things in any country is a national plan like they have in the UK or even Portugal, for that matter, Mr. Speaker, because there's one thing that everybody should be guaranteed is health coverage, whether it's the hospital or wherever. And I say this because, I mean, we give the hospital a lot of money each year, and we're still paying. But Mr. Speaker, the other thing with Southampton Princess, with that investment in this country, over 450 million, once that gets up and going, I think it would attract more investment. I'm hoping that would attract somebody to come and take over Elbow Beach, because that would be another 150 to 200 jobs. Mr. Speaker, when we had 10,000 beds in Bermuda, we had over 35,000 workers. Bermuda was booming. But now we have lost 7,000 to 8,000 workers over the last, I guess, 10 years. It doesn't bode very well to a country that depends on foreign exchange as income, Mr. Speaker. So I really want to make the point that that Minister Hayward and the government, when they say we need 8,000 workers, they've done the homework. And no, we don't want 8,000 workers coming here, and they don't and they don't want it either with no jobs. We're not going to fluctuate, put this country, 8,000 workers on this country and no jobs for them. Anybody that thinks that way, I shouldn't say the rest, but anyhow, they shouldn't think that way, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want people to understand this age dependency thing, because, you know, the baby boomers born in the 50s and 60s, like Renee and that crowd were, I'm a little later than that, but they had a boom on babies this time. And Mr. Speaker, in Bermuda right now, the latest figures I saw, our deaths outnumber births. And when a country has deaths outnumbering births, we got a serious problem. You know, when a lot of you in this crowd that were born years ago, having 6 children in a family, that was a small family. Because, you know, most people went up to 10 and 12. I had a neighbor had 19. Right, there were no TV. I can show you that. But now we're not producing enough children in order to sustain us the standard of living that we want to maintain. So I just hope people take their time, understand it. If they don't understand it, ask Minister Hayward. I'll do my best to try and explain it to them also, Mr. Speaker. But we need people in this country, but more so we need investment. And let me say that, Mr. Speaker, we want, and the minister would want, we hire Bermudians first if you're prepared to work. You cannot show up on a job for an interview and you tell the boss, well, I normally take off my granddad's birthday. Now, granddad's been going 30 years, right? And you know, they've got to do this. They're putting their conditions on the table even before they see the job description. Mr. Speaker, you either want to work or you don't. The jobs don't wait for you. And Mr. Speaker, I would venture to say practically all good workers are working right now, as it is in any country. And it may not, there are jobs out there, it may not be the job you want. But we come through that. We had to take jobs that we didn't want years ago. The main thing, we had to get income, because I remember my cousin Kenyatta, he says, when he left school, his mama gave him, I think, 5 days to get a job or he's out. He's got to take to the streets. He got a job. And you know, it's, I guess that's what they call taking castor oil or color oil. Which one is nasty? You know, but it's good for you. Yeah. And so, Mr. Speaker, some people want the job and they want the top dollar and they don't have the skills. Because you can carry a hammer in your hand, that don't make you a carpenter. Sure. You know, so unfortunately, the facilities and the system that we had in place many years ago, apprenticeship scheme, is not there anymore, Mr. Speaker. And I know this government, they've offered training in the hotel and other training at the college and put money aside. I think each year the budget for education goes up, you know, so I think the government has got it right. But we want our people to take advantage of it. Take advantage of what's available for you. You gotta have a trade, regardless what the trade is. And I think some people over the years in Bermuda, people think if you're not a doctor, lawyer, or teacher, you're not successful. Well, some of those doctors, lawyers can't fix your toilet. You know, they can't do that fine craft work, the mill work of cabinets and stuff. And I can tell you, Bermuda's got some of the finest carpenters in the world. I've seen factory work from Bermudians. And they learned it all here, Mr. Speaker. So there are some, but let me say it before I said it, Mr. Speaker, and you will recall this. When the government built Berkeley in 2002 or 2004, they put $1 million aside. Premier Alex Scott was the minister then. And that $1 million was for anybody that goes that wants to learn a trade, whether it be carpentry, electrical, masonry. And I think this could have been $15 an hour then. And most people that went up there, probably 99%, and they was offered that job, young people, they said, no, I'll work as a labor pay a little more. And they lost the opportunity to get a trade. When we were younger, it didn't matter to us. We wanted a trade, and you know, we didn't get what a labor gets, but we was getting a trade, and we was able to pass that benefit on to our family because we had a trade and we could make the money that was necessary to feed and clothe and everything else within, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm just asking our folks to step up. Yes, and again, I support Colonel Birch on the Oceanview knockdown. It was an eyesore. It was Earl, and the history of it. You know, me and the history. So I think he done a great thing, despite my cousins who don't agree with him. But let nobody fool you. I certainly agree with what he done down there, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.